rdl725? Good afternoon. So we'll continue the discussion on some of the basics of microeconomics. So in the last class we were discussing the market mechanism, right? How it works. So I talked about the Adams theory, the assumptions on which Adams theory is based. But then, and then we discussed about the resource scarcity and mentioned that market is a social institution where scarcity is indicated by the price, right? But how it works? Let us understand this. So this is price, and need not to mention again and again that when I am saying price or anything like this, demand supply curve or y-axis, I am basically meaning marginal price, right? So the concept of marginality is clear to all, and this is उसको नहीं लगा इसको बस ऑन. So on x-axis it is the quantity, right? So what we know that this is what we were discussing in the last class. So this is the price, maximum price which a consumer is willing to pay for any commodity, right? If the price goes beyond that, फिर for what? Obviously, when I am talking about one curve, this is the curve made for a particular situation. For example, if you change the socio-economic group for the same community, you can have another plot because they are ready to pay on. For the same commodity, they are ready to pay more price. They want to consume. They are ready to consume at higher prices. And when I am talking about this curve I am plotting for normal good. I am not plotting it for inferior good. So there is a concept of inferior good in economics. Inferior good is, so normal good is the one for which demand increases, with increase in demand, price decreases, right? But inferior, or you can say that with increase in the wealth, willingness of the consumer increases. The willingness to pay increases. But in case of inferior good, it is just opposite. Inferior good is something in which with the increase in wealth, demand actually decreases. So for example, did we talk about the difference between need, want and desire? No. Okay. So there are three things in economics. One is need, want and desire. So what is need? Which is essentially needed for survival, right? So most of the inferior good belongs to this category, need category, right? What is the want? When you want to improve your quality of life, so it is indicating. So it is related to, so basically normal goods and services belong to this category, okay? And desire is anything. So need, want and desire, they actually are getting converted into the demand, and everything is related to the utility, the size of the utility. So here it is a survival, utility is a survival. Here the utility is quest for better quality of life, right? So okay, so this is the demand curve, and what it indicates that with more quantity available in the market, a consumer is willing to pay a lesser amount, right? So with every unit increase, the marginal, so when I say this price, so this I am talking about a particular unit. So this is the, let's say, the first unit which the consumer is consuming, for which he is ready to pay this price. With the next unit of for consumption, his willingness is decreased and he is ready to pay less. Similarly, there is another curve that is called supply curve. So as I mentioned that when you have freely available resources, so what is happening, that these are the resources which are limited. So resources means land, labor and capital. Let's say you have just a simple analysis, X, Y, Z, 3 economic activities, right? In a particular region, some resources are available, land, labor and capital, and they are to be distributed to X, Y, Z economic activities. And let's talk about labor next. So it has got certain demand, A for labor, B for labor, C for labor. And the constraint is that AL plus BL plus CL is greater than equal to the total labor which is available, total resources available. Now suppose this is a reverse situation. This is less than the labor, then there is no scarcity, then there is no issue. Okay. So we are dealing with a situation, we are assuming that there is a scarcity because resources are limited. Okay. And that's why there is a positive price. Okay. So this is the case, and mostly it is only this. So what will happen, that this labor will be distributed in X, Y, Z. Okay. And there will be, since there is a healthy competition, then this labor will be with a similar skill quality. They will be getting the similar price in all 3, right? Now, what is happening? That this air they have bought from this resource, but for making certain extra production, they need some extra labor, right? Now, extra labor means what? This is the overtime. You can assume it to be overtime. So earlier, when I am doing the calculation ALBL, that is based on, let's say, 8 hours of the productivity time. Per means, but per person is every labor is working for 8 hours. Now you need extra labor. So what you are saying, that okay, I will pay you extra, you work for 10 hours. That is overtime, right? So what we are trying, what we are saying, that so productivity of 8 hours is more than productivity. This is specific productivity, means productivity per hour is more than specific productivity of 2 hours. Means after 8 hours, the productivity of labor will decrease. That is why instead of one labor, or instead of the, so let's say based on 8 hours productivity, you will be requiring 10 extra labor or 20 labor hours, let's say. This calculation they made based on their productivity in the normal time. They did some calculation, and this firm did some calculation and found that we need 20 labor hour extra. Okay. Since the productivity has gone down, quality of labor has gone down. So instead of 20, they have to go for 24 hours. What does it mean? After a certain limit, quality of resources goes down. So a firm is ready to produce at this level if choice is given to him or given to that firm. Okay. But the choice is not with the firm. Choice is with the market. For the market, he has to produce some quantity. Let's say this quantity. Right? So he has to increase the production. Increasing production means the cost. So this is the cost of production when resources are, he is utilizing most efficient resources. Okay? But since he needs to produce more, the cost of production increases, because now he is consuming, or the firm is consuming lesser efficient resources. So he has to pay more money. Okay, so this is the supply curve, and it starts with certain. So in the beginning itself, there is some price. Cost is not zero in the beginning. When the firm is utilizing the best possible resources, so there is a cost of production, and then this cost of production increases. Is it okay? Yes or no? It's simple. Let's not go into very detail of the microeconomics, but you just understand how it works, right?
So, but that quantity can be say produced in the next day, and then that data will be.
So when I am plotting this curve, it is not day wise. It is a equilibrium curve. In a lower, and even the commodity is not one. It is the overall plot of any economic structure, right? Okay. Let us see when I am saying that, and this is the point where I am saying in long run equilibrium is reached. What does this mean? It means that this is the point where consumer and producer both are having the maximum benefit. Okay, and this is called market price. And that is what I was saying, that, or Adam Smith was suggesting, that market has a mechanism to deal with the resource scarcity, and that mechanism is called price or the equilibrium price. Okay, let us see how this situation is win-win for both producers and consumers. Let's say this is the consumer, right? After equilibrium, consumer is purchasing the good at this price. Okay, right? However, consumer was ready to pay this price for this quantity, this price for this quantity. For every quantity left to this, consumer was ready to pay higher price than the equilibrium price, isn't it? So, if I calculate what consumer would have paid for this much of consumption, is this rectangle, is this trapezium, isn't it? Area, this area, and what consumer is actually paying after the equilibrium? This is the quantity, this is the price, this is what he is paying. That means this is the consumer surplus. Consumer was ready to pay, but since market was in action, or perfect market was in action, it resulted into some benefit to the consumer. It saved consumer to pay this much. Similarly, if you talk about producer, so what is the cost of production? This is the cost of production. So this rectangle is actually what producer should have paid if he has produced every good at this price. But actually, how much amount producer is spending? See this area of this cuisine. Is it clear? So, what is the producer surplus? This is the producer. So, his firm's total cost was less than the hypothetical cost he would have spent, or his actual cost is much less than. So, this is the situation where, and that is why we are saying that both producers and consumers are working for their own interest, but ultimately this is they are reaching to a situation where both the parties are win-win situation. This situation in optimality is called Pareto optimality, right? Okay, let us also see how actually. Now there can be a question, if you move left or right to this, what will be the situation? Let's say, hypothetically we assume that this is the price, okay? So, what will be the benefit, additional benefit to the consumer? This will be this area will be the additional benefit to the, right? But then at this quantity, the actual production cost, this is the consumer price. This is the price consumer is getting because of extra quantity in the market. But for this extra quantity, producer has to pay more, right? So with this quantity, the price of the consumer is this. It will be the price, the highest price consumer is paying this. So the producer is produced. So the cost to the producer is this producer. So if I look at the net, so there is a loss to the producer, there is a profit to the consumer. Net is for society, this is the net loss, isn't it? So what will happen? I mean, this is what I am saying is how equilibrium is reached. So hypothetically, we have assumed that this was the price, or this is the quantity they decided to produce. Okay. So with this quantity, consumer is ready to pay less, production cost is higher, producer would not like to produce this much. They will go in the left direction, and ultimately they will reach to this point. Same way, if I move to this point, though producer is ready to, producer will be benefited because cost of production at this quantity will be less. But then the consumer satisfaction, the loss in the consumer satisfaction will be more than the benefit to the producer. So then there will be a movement towards right. Right? So if you are at this point, there will be movement like this. If you are at this point, there will be movement towards. And ultimately, in both the cases, already I have told you that this is a case of Pareto optimality because both the parties are benefiting, right? When they are operating at this equilibrium. Okay. So this is the concept of price, which I just wanted you to understand, because throughout this course we will be, utilizing this demand and supply curve, of course, in different perspective. Right. So a very simple case: if something is free, can we make a demand and supply curve for that? Yes, we can. So let's say This is the curve where this line indicates supply and this is the demand. So answer is yes, we can have a demand and supply curve for which there is no scarcity. However, there won't be any price. This resource will remain free because we can see that these demand and supply curve, they are not interacting. There is no intersection. So all the time demand is lesser than the supply value. So you see, once the quantity reaches to this level, demand of the product or the willingness of the consumer. So when I say demand is decreasing, increasing, it basically means the consumer willingness to pay, right? So at this point, consumer is not ready to pay any money. And even at this point, supply is sufficient. So this is a classical case where resource remain free. I took the example of air in the last class. Okay. Rahul, let's see if we have included the stuff. Okay. So maybe you can use this. Okay. अच्छा ये है okay.
So even if the labor productivity is increasing, as your quantity increases, your price would increase naturally, right? So in any case, that would be an upward curve.
Again.
The producer's curve is upward, the supply curve. And you were telling that because labor productivity.
It's not only labor, all resources. Okay, I take better example. You understand arable land. What is arable land? All of you understand? The land on which you can do agriculture. So arable land is something on which agriculture can be done without extra inputs. Of course, you have to put seed and everything, right? Means land treatment you don't have to do. So you are putting fertilizer, pesticide, insecticide, that is all okay, because that you are, those inputs are there for changing the yield, right? Increasing the yield, productivity, that's all. But land is arable. Now let's assume that not all the land available on earth is arable, only limited portion is arable, okay? Now let's take a hypothetical situation where you consume all the arable land and still there is a demand for grains. Population is increasing, right? So what will you be doing?
Increase the yield.
That also has got a limit. Okay. What else? What next step you are going to take?
Vertical pathing,
increasing the land.
That's not possible.
That is possible. Wasteland development. So there is a inferior land available. So when I am saying arable land, that is the best available land. That is what I mentioned. That so arable land means there is no extra effort required for land development. Now, as I mentioned that you have to use inferior resources. So for inferior resources, you will be doing some treatment to the land. Let's say you have acidic soil available, land which has got acidic soil or saline soil. So the first thing what you will be doing is land development. Okay, you will be treating the land. You will be making this land arable. And then all inputs will be there, seed, fertilizer, pesticide, everything will be there. So if you look at the total production cost, So in the second case, what will happen? There will be extra production cost, right? So this is actually, so what we are saying that this arable land is very limited, and this is going for, let's say, production of various grains, various cereals, pulses and everything. So the total demand is so high, so that we have to increase the arable land area by utilizing inferior sources. Okay, right. So now we understand the price as indicator. The price as indicator has got, price also indicates two more different type of scarcity. So the scarcity which I have just discussed is the absolute scarcity. Price also indicates relative scarcity or say opportunity cost. What does it mean? Let's compare the price of gold and iron. It's a better comparison. Now, when I compare the price of gold and iron, we are not actually indicating the absolute scarcity, right? It also indicates, it may have, as I mentioned in the beginning, need, want and desire. It may have input because of, so iron we require for certain purposes, but it is not considered to be precious. So it can be want, but gold is a desire, right? Second, efforts for iron and gold, the skill requirement, the resource requirement can be different. So price also, when we say difference of the prices between gold and iron, it does not indicate purely absolute scarcity. That means it does not indicate that gold reserves are lesser and iron reserves are huge. They can be of similar, the amount can be similar. Of course, there can be a difference also, but there are multiple factors other than the absolute scarcity. So that is what I am saying, that price also indicates relative scarcity, right? Price also indicates emerging scarcity, right? For example, oil reserves. Now suppose the oil, you have limited oil reserves, okay? So the absolute scarcity will come, maybe the question of absolute scarcity, or we have actually not done any calculation, but what we understand that yes, there is going to be the emerging scarcity of this particular reserve. So sometimes the price indicates the emerging scarcity. Okay, just I mentioned, we may not be using this in our discussion much. Okay, now two more phenomena of neoclassical economics, which we will be talking quite often. There is a concept called factor substitution. Let us understand this. But before that, why this concept is important for us. and then we will be talking about role of technology. See, why we are trying to understand neoclassical economics? Because our aim is to have a perspective on, or rather an alternative perspective on growth and development. And in the first class, I talked about the biophysical limit. And I mentioned that we are ignoring the biophysical limit. Okay? We started with an example of air pollution, right? And finally, we agreed on one thing, that yes, there is a problem. There is a problem with the existing economic structure, right? When I say biophysical limit, basically I am indicating the resource scarcity. Okay? There is a branch called ecological economics or environmental economics, and these economists, they have concerns about degradation of natural resources, degradation of ecology as such, and they claim that the neoclassical economics, the economic theory which we are following today, which is mainly run on the concept given by the Adam Smith, right? That is the market economy. I mentioned in the previous class also, both capitalist economy and socialist economy, they were almost on the similar principle, except who is owning the wealth, who is controlling the production system. Otherwise, as far as their concern about nature is almost similar. There is no difference. Okay, so these ecological economists, they raise this issue that with this economic structure, with this concept of unlimited growth and development, we are facing unprecedented challenges. Some of the challenges you can name, but overall if I say, the challenge is that we are ignoring ecological limits, and that's why we are facing a lot of environmental problems. Climate change is one which we know. In past we have seen ozone depletion. I mentioned probably about the lifestyle diseases. I mentioned in the first class. Yeah. So nobody can say that we are not facing any problem. We are facing problems. The neoclassical economics branch, it says that this market can take care of everything. What does it mean? If human health, let's say human health is a commodity, and there is a scarcity of human health, then market, the proponent of the market economy, they say that don't worry, market will take care of the human health. If ecological degradation is a commodity and it is real cause of concern, when I am saying commodity, that means there is an absolute scarcity of that. So they say that market will recognize that ecological degradation is a commodity, and don't worry, market will take care of it. So something will happen, some interactions will happen, and we will reach to a solution through a price mechanism. That is what they claim. Okay? Their claim is supported by some arguments. So, factor substitution and role of technology, they are there two very strong arguments. So, market structure we have understood how it works. So, let us first talk about the first argument, that is factor substitution. although both of them are slightly interrelated also. So factor substitution is when we talk about degradation of natural resources, let's say degradation or let's say biodiversity, loss of biodiversity. Ecologists are having concern about biodiversity. And we are saying that let us do something to arrest this phenomenon. What new classical economists are saying? Don't worry about biodiversity. The reason is factor substitution. Now, what is hidden in this? They only recognize the resource which is having economic importance as a resource. So, when I say natural resource, land, labor and capital, land, labor and capital. I think I mentioned this in the first class. So for them, anything is resource only if it can be sold in the factor market. Means if it can be, this resource can be utilized in any economic activity. It can be value added. Otherwise, for them, it has no meaning. So, any natural resource which does not have any economic value is not recognized by the neoclassical economics. So, this is when they say factor substitution, what they are saying that if you are done with oil, or sorry, coal, you can move to oil. If you have lesser oil, then move to capital. What does it mean? Very good example. How many of you love bikes? किसी को भी पसंद नहीं bikes? It is strange. Cars. Okay. So do you have some data related to mileage? Right? We Indians normally first look at the mileage. Okay. So any 100cc car, 1000cc car, what is the mileage? 10 to 15 petrol, diesel, or let's talk about bike, because bike is a better example. What is the mileage of 125cc bike?
40 to 40.
Just quickly check Google. What is the mileage Kawasaki is giving?
For 125cc it is around 40 to 40.
Just check. I think it should be more. Their claim should be 80 or 90, something like that.
Around 60.
Around 60?
45
45 to
to 60.
60. किस company के लिए? Which company you saw?
Bajaj and Honda.
Bajaj 125cc is 60, right? If you check the mileage of the similar bike 30 years ago, it was 30. We have moved to what is the anyone having any idea on diesel cars? Diesel cars. Why diesel cars are more popular? Better mileage. Anyone from mechanical engineering? Mechanical वाला कोई नहीं? अच्छा जी बताते ही नहीं है कि कौन सी ब्रांच के लोग? Nobody is from mechanical? Chemical? So what is the efficiency of Otto cycle and what is the difference between efficiency of Otto cycle and diesel cycle? I hope you understand. All of you have gone through studied thermodynamics. Which cycle is more efficient, auto or diesel? Correct? It's a very simple question.
Diesel.
Huh?
Diesel.
I'm not talking about car, I'm talking about cycle. Which cycle is more efficient, auto or diesel? For a given compression ratio, compression ratio you understand? Achha, how many of you can draw auto cycle? Or Carnot cycle? Come on, huh? Okay, let me cut it short. So, auto cycle efficiency is always higher than diesel cycle for a given compression ratio. Means, if the compression ratio for both the cycles is same, they are operating at, let's say, 8 or 10 compression ratio, then auto cycle efficiency is always higher than, right? What is the mileage of a diesel car? Diesel car is based on diesel cycle, and auto cycle, petrol car is based on auto cycle. Okay. So what is the mileage of a petrol car? 14, 15, someone is mentioned. 1000 cc car. Huh? 15. And what is the average of diesel car? 20. How is it possible? And actually, it has happened. Diesel cars were popular in India 30 years ago, not because of better mileage, but because of subsidy in diesel. There was subsidy in diesel, right? Many people, they make a case of subsidy in diesel, but actually subsidy is not required in diesel, except if you forget the agriculture use of diesel in agriculture, but that is very minimal. Now the mileage of car has reached to, diesel car has reached to 20, 22, much higher than the auto cycle. And how they have achieved it? They could increase the compression ratio. Now you are getting cars which are working at a very high compression ratio. So it is not that efficiency of auto cycle or diesel cycle has changed. It cannot change. It is theoretical thing. But they could achieve very high compression ratio. And how could they achieve this high compression ratio? Lot of innovation in materials. Earlier, the material which they were using to make these engines, they were not able to get higher compression ratio. But now they have. So, what I am saying that if oil is getting scarce, then substitute it by the capital. You have invested in innovation, new material, new machine. So, land, labor, capital. In place of land, you have moved to capital. So, there are two possibilities of substitution: within factor, intra-factor and inter-factor. Means you can replace the similar type of resource, coal with oil, oil with gas, gas with something else, maybe hydrogen in future, or ethanol. Ethanol is a good example of substitution. Okay? Or you can replace it by machine, capital. To understand inter-factor substitution, it is much easier to understand by labor and capital. Replacing labor by machine, capital. Okay, so this concept of factor substitution says that there is unlimited possibility of substitution of factors, whether it is inter or intra. And this possibility of factor substitution of factor gives us immense opportunity for growth and development. Let us not be scarce. Let us not be scared about the scarcity. So when I am talking about biodiversity, they are considering biodiversity only as a means of production. For them, biodiversity is important only if any species is important for them for any economic activity. Otherwise, they don't care, right? And what they are saying that any resource which is for economic importance has got some substitution. There is a possibility of substituting that resource by. There are many examples. There was a time when we all used to have glass bottles. Now nobody is talking about glass bottles. We were carrying metal boxes. Now you don't see metal boxes. You have substituted one material to by another material, right? One technology by another technology. Okay. The second concept on which the don't worry theory of neoclassical economists is, so the second foundation is the role of technology. So first foundation principle is the substitution of factor, possibility of substitution of factor, and second is the role of technology. What is that? Almost similar to role of technology. They say that, so just example what I shared with you, it is nothing but technology, innovation. Material is, we are moving towards that example I used for replacing capital. So the similar example can be used for role of technology. So we have moved to a situation which was unimaginable. So when I studied thermodynamics, engineering thermodynamics, when I studied Otto cycle and diesel cycle, it was a kind of thumb rule that diesel car cannot have higher efficiency than the petrol car, same cc, right? Today it's not that. The whole thing is changed, right? Thermodynamics has not changed, but the technology has changed its application. So too much belief in human mind, we can get the solution. There was a problem related to chlorofluorocarbons. Everybody was concerned that what will happen. We got the substitute, new technology. We were worried about oil. We are now moving towards ethanol. How much ethanol we are using in India in petrol cars? It has increased to the 20%, right? And probably that is one of the reasons why petrol prices are not coming down, because cost of ethanol production is almost 1.8 times of the current cost of production of ethanol in India. So it is actually oil companies are making loss because they are compulsorily blending ethanol into the fuel. But this is a policy issue. We want to reduce our dependence on crude oil. That is why, so it is a strategic decision, right? But ultimately, what I am trying to say is there is a technology. Who knows? Now we are trying to move to EVs. Who knows, within 10 years we will all move to hydrogen. So, role any problem can be resolved by technology. We'll be having a debate on this issue, maybe in the last leg of the course. So where we will be have discussion on population, issues of development, and how they can be resolved. So these neoclassical economists, they actually say that the problem we are having, the problem humanity is facing is not because of development. It is because of the fact that large population of this globe is underdeveloped. And they say that the solution for every problem is development, growth. And many arguments. So, if you talk about the environmental challenges, let's take, how they argue. How is the air quality in any developed country? Let's say any country of Europe or US, and if we compare it with India, where do you find the better quality of air?
Europe.
Any doubt?
Developed countries.
Developed countries. Better quality of water?
Europe.
Better quality of soil? And that is what they argue, that with development. And what was the air quality in London 70 years ago or 100 years ago? Forget about London. The quality of Rhine in Germany just 30 years before. 40 years before. Very bad. And today you see the quality of water in Rhine. So this is their argument that actually it is a development who has solved the problem. And their argument is again demand and supply. So what they are saying that demand for better environmental quality. So they are saying that it is environmental quality is a commodity, and since they are wealthier, they are ready to pay higher price, and that is why demand of better quality, higher quality has increased because of the growth, because of the development, and it has resulted into. But this is not a comprehensive picture. This is, I am putting their argument. Why this is not a comprehensive picture? Let's analyze a bit, then I will move to the second part. What is if you look at the consumption of electronic items in any developed country, or anything which produces or generates pollution, are they manufacturing these goods in their own country? Look at the textile. Who is producing textile for them? Bangladesh, India, Vietnam. Who is producing electronic items for them? Taiwan, China.
USA.
Now China is also shifting their production to this. I take very classical example. When we look at the power production when we analyze the power production, electricity generation scenario around the world, often countries like India are targeted on the account of utilization of coal. We have around 60% power electricity generation. I may not be correct, but yes, still there is a dominance of thermal power plants in India. If you look at our pie chart, although we are moving towards renewable energy and the fraction is increasing, but we are often criticized, right? And they say that developed countries, they have cleaner systems as far as power generation is concerned. Let's take an example of France. Can you just check what is the share of nuclear energy in power generation in France? There was a time when it was more than 75%. Of course, they have also started moving in reverse direction.
70.
70? And obviously, if you are running your plants on nuclear energy, your air quality bound to be good. So there is no air pollution. It's a good situation from the environment point of view.
Air quality point of view.
Air quality point of view. What is the problem?
Land.
Land also not required much.
Nuclear waste.
There will be
Leakage.
Nuclear waste.
Leakage.
Okay, that is safety. But safety can happen. I mean, any disaster may happen or may not happen. But something which is inevitable is the generation of nuclear waste. You know what they are doing with their nuclear waste? Dump. They have to dump. So where they are dumping it? In the sea, isn't it? Deep sea. And they claim that it is a very safe method. Do you agree with that? Let's say that we agree to that. Let us see. So where they are dumping in the sea? They have a coastline. France is a country which has got coastline. It is not a landlocked country. So ideally, they should dump their nuclear waste within their international boundary. But they are not dumping in their country. They are dumping it somewhere in Pacific Ocean, near to some African country. If it is so safe, then why they are? And they are claiming that their energy production is clean. Because the parameters they have decided has to be air quality. Right? So the claim of substitution of factor, claim of role of technology is valid till we examine it rationally. We need to examine it rationally, and then only we can say. So, what I told you is their argument, but a small glimpse I have shared that technology does not provide a good solution or a better solution every time. Right? We need to examine it thoroughly. Right. Now let us come to the challenges of neoclassical economist or neoclassical economic theory with respect to the scarcity of natural resources. Okay. So the first challenge is, it was you have already explained, too much believe in technology is a problem. Because impact of technology can be seen only after a certain time. Again I can repeat the example. When we discovered chlorofluorocarbons, refrigerants, they were known to be wonder chemicals because of their nature. 10 years later we found that this discovery was a disaster. When we started using plastic in all spheres of our life, we were very happy. When we started packaging our milk in plastic pouches, today also you get milk in plastic pouches, water in plastic bottles, PET bottles, because those glass bottles were very heavy, and with this lighter packaging material, better technology of pasteurization and packaging, you need not to have dairies in your city, in your neighborhood. Today the milk you are consuming is getting from, you do not know, maybe from Anand, maybe from Gujarat, maybe from some plant in Dharuhera, you really do not know. But now you have some other concerns. What are those concerns? You are talking about microplastics. There are studies which are linking cancer also. Now there are several restrictions. Now they say that don't keep PET bottles in heat. It should not be exposed to heat. But you really do not understand the supply chain, how it is coming to you. Before it coming to you, it has got exposed to heat and those extreme conditions. So technology, the impact of technology you can get only after some time. Today you are talking about EVs. But then what will happen with the battery? Already we are struggling with the huge e-waste. Everybody was happy saying that we have replaced paper with virtual data. There is no need to have papers, because papers, the production of paper is making impact on environment, cutting trees, generating effluent. But now we are realizing that storing data in electronic mode is also creating a problem. Today when we write a mail, many people they have a signature saying that with this mail they have saved this much of paper, and with this saving of paper this much of carbon emission is saved. Maybe tomorrow someone will say that with this bit or byte, the footprint of this byte or this mail is this much. That footprint may not be in terms of carbon. It may be in terms of ecotoxicity. It may be in terms of something else. Right? So too much dependence on technology is not good. Second, this substitution of factor, again, it cannot be unlimited. Number one, you cannot replace, so there is a minimum quantity of a factor which is required for producing any good. Services are fine, but services are secondary. First, it is the good. What you consume is the good, not the service. Right? So, for producing any good, you need the minimum amount of land, minimum amount of natural resource. You cannot create a chapati without any atta, isn't it? You cannot create that. So, material energy balance has to be there. So, you can replace, you can reduce the wastage. So, by efficient process, what you can do? By improving the compression or increasing the compression ratio, you can increase the mileage. But creating a perpetual motion machine, one or two, is an impossible idea. You cannot do that, right? So, factor of substitution in absolute terms, substitution of factor in absolute terms is a utopian idea. You need to have a bare minimum factor of production. Number two, you are considering resource important only if it has got economic value. But we don't understand the ecosystem function very well. It is not known to us that if biodiversity is lost, what kind of impact it is going to have on, so suppose one species is lost. We don't understand, we do not know what kind of impact it is going to have. We have so many examples where we have seen this. Take one example. Natural pollination during agriculture. It happens, it improves productivity. And with the use of pesticide and insecticide, natural actors, those who are doing this pollination, slowly and slowly the population is decreasing. It is affecting the yield. It is also affecting the quality. The quality of produce. Maybe the quantity remains same, but quality is also decreasing. Right? So we don't understand how this ecosystem actually functions. So keeping us blind about the loss of resource, just by thinking of, just by relying on technology or relying on substitution of factor is not a good idea. There are live examples. A very common example which make you understand about the chain. Scientists found that all of a sudden vultures are getting extinct. The population of vultures is decreasing. You know what was the reason? Anyone? Anyone?
Due to some pain relieving medicines.
Right. It was not given to vulture.
It was
Diclofenac. It was administered to cattle and not for relieving their pain. So it acts as a pain reliever. Also, it has got induction effect on milking. The quantity is increased. So when you do milching out of a cattle, With this medicine, this process of milking becomes easier. Number one, you can have more milk. Right? So it was administered to the cattle. Cattle are dying and vultures are feeding on them. Third, what is the time? What is the time? Third, we are saying that the neoclassical economic theory suggests that the interaction of environment and economy is for three purposes. What are these three purposes? Number one, it gets resources for production. So, factor of production, that is land. Two, nature is needed to us, is needed for any economic function for waste assimilation. So any production system, there is an input and there is an output. Second law of thermodynamics. There has to be some waste energy. So any economy is just like a heat engine. You have source and you have sink. So sink is where waste is going. So this is the second relationship. This is what they this is their worldview about the interaction between economy and nature. First, nature is source. Second, nature is sink. And third, is all viewpoint of all the, or this worldview of neoclassical economic theory is anthropocentric. So, factor of production, waste assimilation, third is aesthetics. Humans love nature, enjoy nature, bird watching, trekking, moving into forest, looking at sunrise, looking at sunset, aesthetic value of the environment. These are the three things. That's it. This we have already talked about. Factor of substitution, technology, everything. This is something which is completely ignored. What these neoclassical economists just do? Nature has got unlimited capacity of assimilation. And their assumption is based on the fact that in nature nothing is called waste. So waste of a process is a feed off. But this is true for ecosystem. If you consider ecosystem is a production unit or a factory, then waste of one species is a food for another species. This is how nature works. We will talk about this. So taking this clue, this theory of neoclassical economics says that, assume that we can generate any amount of waste, nature will take care of it. But that's not true. That is the third misplaced argument in mind. Nature has got limited assimilative capacity. Number one. Number two, this assimilative capacity also get altered with the quantity as well as the quality of waste it is receiving. The very good example I quite often I mention is the condition of river Yamuna within Delhi. Right? River regenerates itself, but the stretch in Delhi can be considered as a dead stretch because its assimilative capacity has gone nearly to zero. Right? Okay, so we'll continue this discussion. Next class we will be focusing on the fundamentals of ecology, just for your knowledge, and then the concept of ecological economics. Okay, thank you.
Attendance, student mark.
No, I can run my just